Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to another video, and in this video we're going to be continuing on with our iOS development with UIKit series by talking about UIButton. So, what is UIButton? Well, UIButton is pretty much a button, right? As the name suggests. This allows you to tap it and execute some kind of action. There's a couple ways of being able to create a button, and we'll take a look at that here in a second. But first, we need to talk about. First, we're going to kind of briefly talk about what those ways are. So the first way is by setting properties on the button itself, like the like calling the set title method to set the button's title, foreground and background color to set the background color, stuff like that. Or you can customize the configuration. Since iOS 15, they introduced a new kind of system for this, which is modifying the configuration, the UIButton configuration, and we'll take a look at that as well. So let's get started. First things first, we need to actually create our button. So up in our class at the very top, instead of Xcode here, we need to say something like var button equals UI button, and we can just keep this. We can keep this here as is, empty constructor, all that. But as it stands at the moment, it does pretty much nothing. All right, let's go ahead and create a method called configure UI and call it in our view did load. So configure UI. And we'll say func configure UI. And this will call configure button and configure constraints. All right, here we'll say func configure button. And let's go ahead and func configure constraints. Here we'll just say ns layout constraint dot activate. Okay. And then in here, we're going to use the center X and center Y anchors to center the button on both X and Y axes. So button dot center X anchor dot constraint equal to view dot center X anchor. Okay. And button dot center Y anchor dot constraint equal to view dot center Y anchor. Okay, we have now centered our button on the screen on the X and Y. We now need to give it a width and a height. So button dot width anchor dot constraint equal to constant. This is going to be, let's say, 300. So the width of our button is 300 units. And then button dot height anchor dot constraint equal to constant. And we'll say this is going to be 50. So a little bit taller than is required. But it should be fine as is. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to configure the button in the required ways, and that is first adding a target and setting, mainly adding a target and an action that we want to perform. So buttons use the target action pattern, which basically allows you to specify, if any, target that an action should be performed on, and then the action it should perform. Now, we're not going to have it execute an action on a specific target, so target will be nil in this case. But if you need to set a target, you can do that. So to set our target, we can say button.set target. Or not set target. It's add target. All right. Here we'll say nil because target is an optional of type any. And then action. You can see it's a selector. So what is a selector? Well, a selector is a way for us to reference a function that we want to execute, but it has an Objective-C annotation, an OBJC annotation attached to it, because UIKit was originally made with Objective-C, right? And so because of that, we have to, it's not exactly pretty, but we have to bridge the gap between Swift and Objective-C in this regard to make it work. And that's what the Objective-C, that's what the OBJC attribute does. All right, so the selector is going to be hashtag or # selector, and we'll say do something. And then we want the control, we want the UI control event, so the kind of event we want to perform, which is a touch up inside event. So dot touch up inside. All right. So now that we have a target, we can set the button title by saying button.setTitle. We'll say tap me. We can set the tint color by saying button.tintColor equals, let's say, .yellow or .system yellow. By default, buttons are a blue color, but we're going to change that to yellow here. We can also change the background color if we wanted to, but we're not going to do that for now. And we want button.translates auto resizing masking to constraints. I would set that to false. And then we will say view.add subview button like that. All right. And so with that, we now need to define our action method. So down here at the bottom of our file, we'll say @objc, and we'll say private func do something. And inside of here, we'll just say if button dot tint color is equal to system yellow. We want to change the tint color button dot tint color. We'll change it to dot system teal maybe. Otherwise, we want to set the button's tint color to a dot system yellow. So it'll toggle between those two colors every time we tap the button. All right, go ahead and run your code now. Okay. Okay, we have an extra argument somewhere. Let's see, and this is okay. Let's see here. So we're going to get rid of that. Button set title, quotation mark, comma, for dot normal, like that. Okay, now if we run it, so there's our button. You can see it has its color and everything like that. We can tap, 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 and it'll just kind of do its thing. And that's all fine and dandy. However, what if, let's see here, we want, let's see here, let's get rid of some of this here. There we go. We want, okay. So what we want is we want to define a configuration. So we can say button.configuration equals dot. And we have a few different configurations here. The first being bordered prominent. And that basically says, give our button kind of a border style with an opaque color as its like background. Bordered is similar, except it's a slightly translucent, more subtle background. We have a tinted button as well. We have a borderless button. And we have filled. We have gray. And we have plain. So let's say Let's say we want a bordered button. All right, so now we have a button that has a bordered configuration. We can then modify this configuration further by saying button.configuration dot, let's say, title. And we can say tap me. Right? And we can say button.configuration dot, let's say, dot background color. Equals dot let's see, dot, let's see, so we can say attributed subtitle, attributed title, we can set a background configuration, we can say base background color, which is the one we want. We can set that equal to, let's say, dot system yellow. And we can then also set the button dot configuration dot foreground, base foreground color is equal to dot black, let's say. Okay, so that is going to be our default configuration here. Okay. Yep. Now inside of our buttons action here, we're gonna change a few things and then save it here. So if button dot dot configuration dot base background color is equal to system yellow, we're going to, instead of tint color, we'll say configuration dot base background color is equal to a teal. And then we'll say button dot configuration dot base foreground color is equal to dot white. And then here, again, we'll change tint color. So dot configuration dot base background color, system yellow. And then button dot configuration dot base foreground color is equal to a dot black. Okay, we can save this. Yes, I would like to do that. I would like to replace it. And here is our bordered prominent. So you can see the button is yellow and the text label is black. So let's tap it. The color changes. Tap it again, and again, and again. So you can see how the color changes every time the button is tapped. Let's go back to where we're configuring the style here. Okay. All right, so that's our bordered style, rather. We now want bordered prominent. So we can save this, run it. All right. This is bordered prominent. And so it does the same thing. Relatively simple. All right. So let's say, so we got bordered. We've looked at bordered prominent. Let's say bordered tinted. So you can save this and run it. So this is the bordered tinted. You can see that it does have a border, but it's the background is not as like prominent as with bordered or bordered prominent. We tap our button, the color changes. Do it again. Right? So you kind of get the idea there. Let's see here. Dot. So we got bordered, bordered prominent. We got bordered tinted. We got borderless. So if we run this now, we can take a look at what the borderless button looks like. And this looks more in line with a normal button. Let's go ahead and tap it. Changes. You know, you get the idea. Let's see. Let's take a look at what else we have. We have our borderless. We have filled. So if we save this and we run it again, this is filled. Does all of its stuff as usual. Then if we go down here again, we have plain, and we have gray. Now, if we take a look at our gray style, what happens then? Now, because we are setting our background and foreground colors, gray isn't going to have much of an effect. But when you don't set the background and foreground color, it'll the button will be kind of a gray color. So let's go ahead and comment out those lines, in fact. Okay, so we'll save this and we'll run it. Okay. And so here's the gray button. You can see it's gray, right? We tap it. Our action executes and changes the colors accordingly. All right. And then let's see, we got plain, which just allows you to do some other configurations yourself. It's just a plain old button, no styling or anything like that. And take a look at tinted here. So here's our tinted button. That's what that looks like. And then I believe that's all of them. Let's take a look here. Yeah, so that's all the different button styles that we have. So that really does it for this video on UI buttons. Now there are other things that you can do for this. Like you can set an image, so you can have an SF symbol in your button as well, using a UI image. You can do all kinds of stuff. Now, just before we go, I want to briefly touch on what a UI image is, because if you're going to look this stuff up to try to figure out, hey, how do I apply an image to my button, which is my challenge to you today. A UI image is basically simply just an object that represents an image. This can be an asset in your asset catalog. It can be an SF symbol, whatever the case might be. A UI image is just an object that represents an image. So that pretty much does it for this video, guys. Thank you all so very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.